Okay, call to order the City of Lowell Budget Committee Thursday, May 9th, 2024, 6:02. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett,
Here.
Councilor Harris,
Here.
Stratus,
Here.
Councilor Weathers,
Here.
Councilor Murray,
Here.
Committee Member Petrie,
Here.
Committee Member George,
Yep.
Committee Member B. Wilson,
Here.
Committee Member Annis is absent.
Okay, we have a forum. That was a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First order of business is the selection of the Budget Committee chairperson. Do we have a volunteer? Do we have a nomination? I nominate John. Good.
I second the nomination.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second. All those in favor of John as Petrie as the chairperson, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. I think it was aye for. Thank you, John, for volunteering.
So you want me to go ahead and take it?
Yeah, you got it from here on.
Okay, all right, so looks like the next order of business is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Consensus, I think. of it.
Consensus, okay. I'm not hearing anything. Yes. Okay, so the approval of the agenda is passed. Then we got the approval of the minutes. The first minutes is May 17th, 2023, the Budget Committee meeting.
Well, what?
Can we do them together? You can do them together, yes, May 17th, 2023 and May 24th, 2023. Budget Committee minutes, meeting minutes. Move approval. I'll make the motion.
Good.
Is the motion already out there?
I was mumbling it out.
Oh, I.
You can second it if you like.
I'll second. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. The approval of the meeting minutes for May 17th, 2023 budget committee meeting and May 24th, 2023 budget committee meeting are approved. Okay. Next order of business, old business. We have any old business?
No old business.
Okay. So we move right on to the new business. Presentation of the city administrator's recommended budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025. We're going to have a presentation by the city administrator and questions from the budget committee and then review the budget and then debate further. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Before I get started, we had a few people join online. I'd like to ask, is anybody online? Josh Annis? If you are, please speak up so we know you're here. Okay, sounds like we have members of the public online. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for me to present to you the city administrator's recommended budget for fiscal year starting July 1, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025. My presentation will last about 15 minutes. I would ask that you hold any questions until the end so I can get through the materials. Afterwards, we'll pause for any questions. Then staff and I will review the budget detail sheets with you, and we'll focus on major changes compared to the current year's budget. After that, we have a public comment section, as well as a public hearing. I anticipate that the Budget Committee will want to debate the proposals that you're going to hear tonight. I anticipate that you'll also want to make changes of your own. So we have a discussion scheduled under item number 5, under new business, to do just that. Finally, if it looks like debate is going to extend past 8 p.m., I would ask that the Budget Committee adjourn the meeting and pick deliberations back up at your meeting scheduled for Wednesday next week. Now on to my presentation. Let's start with the heart of the matter, the general fund deficit and decline in fund balance. Since 2019, the general fund has declined since its high of $297,503. In my budget message, I described one-time revenues and expenditures that have affected the general fund's financial condition. We did have significant one-time sources of revenues. Examples include a lawsuit settlement in 2019 with proceeds of $222,437, American Rescue Plan Act grants of around $160,000, and surplus real estate sales that yielded a combined $500,360. These one-time sources of revenues offset many of the capital investments and other expenditures that the general fund incurred over this 6-year period. We also had one-time expenditures. This includes cleanup costs of around $71,000 for the 295 East Main Street property. This year, we've spent a little over $40,000 year to date on legal fees for the East First Street litigation. We also purchased several properties over the 2018 period, 2018 to 2021. Also in my budget message, I described the trends in expenditures and revenues from operations once you subtract these one-time transactions. This graph shows a mismatch between expenditures and revenues starting in 2020. With the cuts that I proposed, the gap between expenditures and revenues closes to $68,516. If not for the East First Street legal fees budgeted for fiscal 25, that gap would only be $23,516. Other factors contributing to this mismatch include adding the library department. The library budget net of offsetting revenues is $66,033. Those are expenditures that the general fund did not have in the past. Another factor is the elimination starting this fiscal year of the franchise fees that we imposed on the water and sewer utilities. For the 2 years that this was in effect, the general fund received a total of $71,682 from those revenues. Finally, debt service has increased. General fund debt service went from $0 in 2019 to an estimated $54,189 in fiscal 25. I now want to discuss how this budget addresses the general fund deficit. Closing this gap will require eliminating services, and I evaluated numerous options. One of the options that I evaluated that could yield the greatest savings while maintaining essential city services was either eliminating the library department or our contract with the city of Oak Ridge for police services. I did not recommend eliminating the library department due to the overwhelming community support that we've received for the new library. I evaluated that against the results from the Oak Ridge Police Department. This graph illustrates the citations that the city of Oak Ridge issued during the calendar 2023 year. Most of their workload involves issuing citations and warnings, mostly for traffic, but we've also relied on them from time to time for code enforcement issues, as well as for criminal law enforcement. Eliminating this service is not to be taken lightly. To be sure, Lane County Sheriff's Office will still respond to emergency calls within the city. And in fact, they're the primary responder when somebody calls 911. But eliminating our contract with Oak Ridge Police would leave the city without regular police patrol, an effective way to issue citations, as well as traffic enforcement. I've not heard from the community that 40 hours of random police patrol, which is what they currently provide, is a high priority. The Budget Committee may disagree with this assessment. In that case, I recommend finding cuts elsewhere if you wish to keep this contract in place. Eliminating the contract results in savings of $36,356. Other cuts that I've recommended are eliminating our contract with Rain. That saves $10,000. They provide consulting services for entrepreneurs. Cutting travel and training, that yields about $5,000 in savings. And keeping pay and benefits at current levels will save a little less than $5,000 just for the general fund. As you can see, achieving long-term sustainability for the general fund is an important task. To help balance the general fund's budget, I plan further sales of surplus real estate. I discussed those sales in the current year's budget. Due to a variety of workload demands, some of which were emergency situations, we did not have the capacity to initiate those sales this fiscal year. Once we've completed the budget process and a few other high priority items, I recommend pivoting to that project. For this budget, as well as the current year's budget, I counted on selling the old City Hall property, as well as the northeastern quadrant of Rolling Rock Park. I understand further discussion is needed on which of the Rolling Rock Park properties to sell. Until that discussion occurs, I can only go by what the city's official policy is. And that policy, as expressed in our downtown and parks master plans, is to sell the northeastern quadrant. The sales revenues that I estimated, once we cover selling costs and debt repayments, net $69,959 for the general fund. Without this, the general fund would have a negative fund balance, which is not allowed. This demonstrates the importance of selling these properties for the 2025 fiscal year. Another recommendation that I have on achieving long-term sustainability is related to the East First Street litigation. If we're able to settle this case, or if we receive awards after our trial, then I recommend using those monies to reimburse the general fund for the legal and other expenses that we've incurred to date. That will ease some of the pressure that we had faced. Second, I also suggest that the Budget Committee and City Council consider referring a local option levy to the voters in the November 2024 elections. This would be a capital improvements levy for the East First Street construction. Due to the risk inherent in litigation, I feel like it's my responsibility at least to bring that option to you for consideration. I now want to move on to the utilities funds. Last year, deciding an acceptable rate for the water fund was where we directed most of our attention. The good news is that water sales have exceeded our projections greatly, and that has contributed to a turnaround in the water fund. In preparing the recommended rates, I factored in using accumulated sewer fund balance for rate relief. This and the increase in projected sales results in rate recommendations in the water fund that are lower than the current rates. In other words, the more water sales you have, you're able to lower the rates in order to keep revenues at current levels. The rate needed to break even in the sewer fund is about $85 per user per month. As you can see, I recommend leaving the sewer rates as is and using accumulated fund balance to fill that gap. I now want to discuss employee pay and addressing workload concerns. As mentioned above, I recommend keeping pay and benefits at current levels. The reason is due to the fact that at least a portion of all employee salaries and benefits are allocated to the general fund. With the uncertainties the general fund is facing, I recommend limiting increases to the general fund. In my message, I state that mid-year pay adjustments may be possible if the financial condition turns out better than expected. The Budget Committee, however, may determine that cost of living adjustments or pay increases are necessary to maintain employee morale. In that case, we can evaluate options on how to accommodate a pay adjustment. For instance, we could identify offsetting cuts elsewhere. We could also recalculate how we allocate employee costs to the general fund. For instance, we could allocate a smaller amount of public works employee time to the general fund, in turn freeing up monies to pay for the pay increase. I'm open to exploring those options. I did, however, budget an $8,000 salary and benefits study to see where our compensation package stacks up with other jurisdictions. Even if we can't fund a pay increase this year, I believe it's important to have a plan to make sure that we're offering a competitive compensation package. Another personnel change includes adding an operator trainee position. I discussed that option in the 2024 budget message, but I didn't recommend it at that time. Due to increasing workloads and the need to have a trainee in the pipeline to ensure redundancy, I recommend funding this position with the upcoming fiscal year. Since this position would assume many of the responsibilities of the part-time maintenance worker, I recommend reducing the part-time maintenance worker's position from 15 to 25 hours per week to 10 hours per week. Now let's discuss the proposed fee increases. The master fee schedule in the recommended budget includes adjustments to various fees, with a focus on planning fees and various administrative fees. The last time we updated that was in 2011. For planning fees, we've evaluated the actual cost of services provided and proposed adjustments to ensure financial sustainability in the long run. These changes are necessary to align our fee structure with the costs that we incur to process land use applications and to monitor and manage development. One other programmatic change in the master fee schedule is the introduction of a library out-of-city patron fee. The introduction of the library out-of-city patron fee aims to reduce the imbalance between the services provided and the funding sources available. While we remain committed to offering library services to all, this fee helps offset the costs incurred by providing services to out-of-city patrons. Lastly, I propose updating our building fee schedule to align with the state requirements and ensure the solvency of the building fund. The last time we updated those fees was in 2012. Lastly, I want to highlight the Emergency Community Water Assistance Grant, or ECWAG. This grant represents a significant opportunity for our city to address critical needs in our water infrastructure. The ECWAG grant provides emergency funding to support infrastructure improvements. This will be to respond to the Lookout Point dam drawdown. In particular, doing retrofits to the water treatment plant so that we can handle the turbidity associated with the dam drawdown. By leveraging this grant, we can invest in vital upgrades that strengthen our water infrastructure and safeguard public health and safety. In conclusion, I presented an overview of the recommended budget for the fiscal 2024-2025 year. We've addressed key issues such as the general fund deficit, funding recommendations, the utility funds, employee pay and benefits, fee changes, and grant opportunities. I'd like to pause now to answer any questions that you may have before we proceed to reviewing the budget detail sheets. Thank you for your attention.
Your Oak Ridge, PD, service that they would, do away with, would they still be contracted to pass out citations for the city? For a code enforcement, or would that be, who would take on that duty? For that, sometimes those people hearing about it aren't that happy to hear about it.
They are open to renegotiating a contract where they would only bill us on an as-needed basis. So it would be like a work order where we would say we want them to serve a citation or perhaps focus on a certain day for traffic enforcement, and then they would bill us just for that service.
If, there was a call to have them return to the 40 hours, would they be willing to do that?
Yes, I spoke with the city administrator yesterday, and they would be willing to go back to that arrangement if we did cancel the contract.
How would they charge it? When they leave up there and when they get back?
Yes.
As far as time is concerned?
Yes,
Only 4 hours lost. Sounds like 4 hours lost, sounds like, now get here and get back, probably a couple hours here. To be my guess, what, part-time.
Have they discussed the hourly rate?
there was a few options. We haven't gone into a lot of detail, but it could either be a minimum number of hours per call, or they would charge us at a double time or overtime rate. If we were to go to an as-needed basis.
Currently, the proposed budget has 0, right? Not a portion or the 40.
Correct.
Is the current contract coincide with the budget year, the fiscal year?
It does.
I don't see it in the index and I didn't see it in here. Usually you spoke about it, about changing maybe the salary allocations. Is that worksheet in the budget packet?
It's not in the packet, but I can pull up the workbook. If you'd like to look at it.
Could you usually give us a copy of that? Could you provide that maybe?
I absolutely could. Or like I said, I could pull it up and we could look at it.
I
Tonight.
just didn't have a copy.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
sure.
Kind of line what she's going, I would be for that because, increasing the salaries out of the water and the wastewater funds, decrease them out of the general fund. For the main reason, Public Works, they did a lot of work for the drawdown, and I anticipate they're gonna be doing a lot more. And for what they did for us this last year, keeping that water clear and running and everything, whenever some of these other towns were having bigger issues, to say that, there's no, increase coming for them, that's pretty bad optics. The regular rest of the staff, you know, I haven't thought about that too much, but the Public Works, I put a lot of value on what they do and what they did this year. There was no small hurdle, and lots of overtime, lots of time down there monitoring what was going on. And if we could move the one in the wastewater, the person in the wastewater, we could move more of the percentage to him and the water fund to him to help pay for it, because I hear that the sales were greater than what we expected. So I don't think anybody wants fee increases, but if there was a minor fee increase to help cover that, I think we need to be very mindful of our Public Works staff, and they're reaching a point where they're becoming quite qualified, quite capable, and shoot, I don't want to retrain a new person while we've just got enough to speed. So that if we could readjust those percentages like she said, I think that would be that.
No, I just wanted the worksheet.
Yeah.
I'm not proposing anything. I just want to look at it because he mentioned it and it's hard to say.
Yeah.
to do it if we don't see what.
I would support it. If we're gaining, funds from the extra sales, I would, I wouldn't feel comfortable with the optics that we've got a lot more money over here than we thought, less money over here. No pay raises, you know, and especially whenever they're the ones behind making the water that's generating the sales. But that's my thought.
Is there a possibility? You raise your hand first.
If we kept the water rates flat, how much would that generate for pay raises? Because I agree with you, look, those rates, the communities already absorbed that rate. They're doing great work providing that service. That is one avenue to explore.
You mean the sewer? You said
No, the sewer is.
Sewer staying.
Sewer is staying.
No, but there was-
Water is going down.
There was a proposal to drop the water,
To keep the sewer.
Okay.
and I think he and I are on the same page of don't drop them, just keep them the same.
I am worried from a morale standpoint, if we start carving out city employees. And say, the work that you have done warrants a merit increase, but the work that you have done is not this year. I do worry about that.
This is Gail. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I wanted to say the same thing. I just think that we need to, if we're going to give increases, I think it's got to be the whole staff. I don't think we can, I totally agree with what Don said in regard to, you know, what amazing work Public Works is doing, but I just wouldn't feel good about not recognizing the rest of the staff. So we need to, in my mind, we need to find a way to do it all or nothing.
Do you have the answer to that question, Jeremy, about what the difference would be if the water rates weren't lowered? You know what that off the top of your.
in terms of how much revenue that will generate?
But remember that break even goes up if we charge more to it, so.
What's that?
About 25 grand is on the base. Just take the current EDUs.
Okay.
The variable part's hard to come up with, because,
Yeah.
you know, everybody's water fine.
And that's what I wanted, but you know, is it bigger than bread box?
Because well, if you look on the. Oh, he's got it right there, but the biggest change is on the base. I mean, everybody's gonna see a. $3.85 discount.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 600 customers, so you do the math there and then times by 12, and roughly. Give or take a few dollars.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
$17,814. Yeah,
All I
and
was gonna say is that covered, yeah.
I'm not worried about the ability of the utilities fund to cover a pay increase. My concern is the general fund.
What drives the percentages between the general fund, the sewer and stuff? So obviously you have a certain percentage where both staff and city hall and sewer, you know, maxes people. And you divide them amongst, how do you come up with, what's the formula, what's the percentages? Is it driven by state or is it something that you do when you do your budget?
Employees, they allocate their time on their timesheets to different cost centers, and that's necessary for workers' compensation. And then we use that to estimate percentages of where employees' time will be.
That makes sense, thank you.
But it's been round numbers, so in the past, it's been 5 and 95, it had for everybody, or what, you know, so I think that's a guide, but I'm not sure, based on what I've seen when we look at it historically, that's.
I can give you guys a rough idea, because we obviously looked at this, but, so there's 5 funds, so to speak, but really the general fund has many funds inside of it, as you guys can see. So if you count all of those, there's like 11, but you got water, sewer, streets, general fund, and then things that we don't play with, you know, but so tourism, code, all the other stuff that Jeremy's talking about, library, economic development, building department, that's all technically under the general fund umbrella. And myself and Jeremy do charge to community development, code and building department, you know, very minimal. But the way the time is spread out, it's different for everybody because everybody works a little bit different. It's very similar for myself and my staff. But I have a little more time on, you know, I have 2 hours a week scheduled at City Hall where they don't, you know. The allocations, this has been brought up every year I've been here. They have changed significantly since when I first started here. I can't speak to why they've changed recently. I know why they changed when I first started here, because there was no balance in the other funds to pay salaries. And as you guys remember, 2015 was a very big year for the city of Lowell. You know, we hired not only a full-time city clerk, a true full-time city administrator, made them eligible for PERS and salary, you know, benefits, which was never for a very long time. Well, the general fund couldn't afford that. So a significant amount of that time got spread across the utilities. When I started here, it was 10% in water and 10% in sewer, which is roughly 4 hours a week. City administrator working 4 hours in water, 4 hours in sewer. Now it's like 22.5%, or whatever it is, but each 5% represents a couple hours. I hit the water and sewer for about 25, 27 a piece, and then of course my guys hit it for 40% a piece because that's what their primary job is. I've talked with Lily about this every year. I've talked with Jeremy about this every year. We actually discussed it late last week when we discussed the budget. You know, I believe it's something I think that needs to be looked at. I brought that up every year during the budget. But the problem is you can only put numbers worth money. I mean, you know, and then it's on Jeremy to move the money where it needs to be to satisfy the numbers. But,
How do you feel the imbalance? How is it not balanced properly? Is it?
well, it's never going to be balanced because
Right.
I mean, we're all technically salaried. We all work a 40-hour work week, just like everybody else in this room. So you have to take the 40 and put it somewhere all 52 weeks of the year, you know. And we do keep track of what we do every day when we turn time sheets and where you're at. But when you say, okay, he's budgeted, you know, 4 hours a week in parks for mowing, right? Well, you guys know we don't mow from about, you know, November to March. Occasional weed eat, something like that. But April to September, we're spending 12, 15 hours a week there, you know, so you got to take it over the year. Even though the number represents hours per week. So it's tough. And I don't honestly have the right answer. There's not really a balance. You can't say, you know, Jeremy does everything he does in general fund, you know, and 35 minutes a day, you know. So it's hard to do that and to move those numbers around. And, yeah.
Right. So what I was hearing is that, you know, it's not quite right and it is hard to get it right.
Well,
it's never going to be.
And it's not, is there a right? That's the problem. Is there a right? Because you can say what you're gonna do. Like, for example, nobody in my field, and Jeremy knows the center time, nobody planned on living at the water plant. Me and my 3 guys from about August to February. And when I say live, we did the bare minimum of the sewer plant and got right back to the water plant every day. So last year, for that 5-month period, I would say 90% of our salaries should have been charged to water, you know. It just doesn't work like that, you know, and eventually it's probably gonna even out, you know, but.
Right.
But yeah,
that was my second part of my question is.
Right.
Where, you know, is there something, boom, that really flashes out at you like, oh my gosh, well, this past year was what you just stated, so.
right,
But, in the accounting world or business, things tend to over time smooth out.
well, there's definitely a pattern, there
Yeah,
really is. I
yeah.
mean, we have, my side's easy because we have stuff we have to do every day. Right, me and everybody that works with me,
Yeah.
you know, we have to do this, so that computes to a certain amount of hours at each plant every day. Then we have state requirements for streets and storm and everything else, you know, so it's a little bit different, and then you know, of course, the other side of things, which is for me is general, because parks is under general, you got parks, you got building, you got code, you got all that
Yeah.
stuff. So it's hard to judge that, you know. We don't charge any kind of Blackberry Jam, not one staff member, you know, of course, it's not a fund that we use that way anyways. You know, when we work on the Blackberry Jam, if me and my staff do something specifically for, it, we charge it to parks. Because the event is happening in the parks.
Right.
And that preparation we're doing, I'm not talking about setting up canopies and, but I'm talking about mowing, we, you know, that stuff, we do that anyways, you know. And that's not a fund that carries money to pay salaries either. That's the other thing, you know, when there's only a little tiny bit there, you charge anything for that tiny bit gone. That's, you know.
Jeremy, since you see all the timesheets, are there changes that you think need to get made into how things are proportioned? Separate from the money, just imagine there's no money. Are the numbers close enough, or do we need to adjust them?
I think they're close enough. I mean, looking at my time, I have administrative oversight over all of the functions, and I don't think it's overly balanced towards one area over the other. It's not exact. We don't allocate it during every pay period based on what's on timesheets. There is a little bit of judgment and discretion that goes into it. But I don't think it's, like I said, overburdening one area versus the other. And there is an element, as Max mentioned, of if we do want to get very precise, or not put so much of my time in the utilities funds, then we have to accept the fact that that's more that we shift to the general fund, which worsens the situation that we're in. But to answer your question, I don't believe that in our allocation that it's grossly off one way or the other.
It's something you always have to look at. It's something that you just can't set and forget about for a year or 2 years. It's an ongoing look at it.
Correct. We look at it every year.
Thank you.
So the wage and benefit study with alcohol. How many paid employees do we have at the city of Lowell?
We have 8. Is it 8, Max?
7.65, but yeah, we have 80.
How many-
What you're talking about, okay,
Just what the survey looked at.
Here we go.
So it would be 8 plus the operator, so there would be a total of 9 teammates that would fall under this study.
So has this already been initiated or is this a proposed?
It's a proposal from Lane Council of Governments. We haven't started it yet.
Okay, it just seems like, and I could be out of the loop, but it seems like a bit of a high price. I'd rather take the 8,000 and throw it into salaries. If that was the dilemma, if we couldn't give the staff a raise that was reasonable, using that money for that. I mean, the other part of that question is on that study, how long would that study be valid? So if we did it now, is that still going to be looked back in 2 or 3 years, or is this a study that would be out of date pretty quick because of the way the economy goes?
It's not something that's good for 5 or 10 years. As to when we would need to redo it, I really don't know.
Okay. But it would be more of a short-term study.
Correct.
So it seems like a lot of money to put into a short-term study.
It's not necessarily a short-term study, though, it's a look at how we got where we're at, though. I mean,
Looking historically.
yeah, I mean, if we haven't done one of these for a long time,
Mhm.
it kind of is a check-in. So, you know, I think that's important. So where have we gone over the last 5, 10 years in relation to these other communities of a similar size, with similar size workforce? So I think that's the more important reason why I think we were looking into this than anything else, is to give ourselves a check-in on where we're at, are we in the ballpark of where we're able to keep our employees, you know, and not lose them to other, you know, municipalities that are offering a better package. So.
So we're looking at the full package, not just pay, and we're gonna look at all the benefits and the tourism and whatnot. I still think it's a lot of money to spend on that issue. I'm not saying that that issue is not important. And I believe in raises and I believe in motivation, but is there another way to get that information besides paying on fire?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna address, because, it's too bad, because most public agencies, that's all public information and it's generally shared. I wish the League of Oregon Cities had that, because the school districts all do. You get the catalog, it won't printed anymore, but it's every position by the enrollment, so, and we do have a list of small cities our size, for $8,000. I mean,
I'm just,
I don't think you
You know.
can spend that much time calling
Well-
20 cities to see, with the benefits, because they have to publish that. It's not like they're having to go research it.
right, well, for example, over the past little bit, I called every county in the state of Oregon to find out what they were doing on a certain issue, and it didn't take that long to grab the information I needed, so I'm just wondering if there was another way.
That's what we did. Go ahead.
Next, go for it.
We did that a couple years ago for I keep calling them new hires, they're not new hires anymore, but. Both of them accepted the job at $14.50 an hour, which at the time was $6 an hour Lane County average for nobody with certification. So what we did is we adjusted, we called around, as a matter of fact, Jared made them do it. So they called all 12 in Lane County and then a bunch of small ones in similar size. And we've done it for many things, their water rates, we did it a couple years ago. And we got a baseline, and we can't afford what our cities afford, but we at least adjusted their scale, all the steps across it, right? What we run into when that happened is, it's one thing to give a step increase, right? But when you give a step increase, a raise, whatever you want to call it, but maybe the CPI was, maybe it was 6 or whatever. So what happens after a handful of years, and that's happened to everybody that works for the city of Lowell, is your pay scale is no longer even in the same range as what everybody else currently is. And that's what happened to both those positions, but that position was never funded either. They've always had 2 people before me. So what you do is you do the wage benefits salary study, if that's what they choose to do, and then every year you do a adjustment for cost of living if you can afford that, and you just use the number that comes out from the state. That's currently how we have things set. We have the budget committee adopted a step increase, and every year we're supposed to adjust it for COLA. But that's how you get behind. But if you kept up with times, I'm not going to say it'd be perfect, right? But not every. I've worked at a lot of places where you don't get, actually, everybody in this room has worked at a place where you don't get a raise every year, I remember I was maxed out for 6 years at my last job, but we at least got a COLA. So every year I got a little bit, so that, I'm making $10 an hour, guess what, 10 years later, I'm still making $10 an hour, but I'm still going to pay my bills, so. That's one thing, and that's usually what they recommend is, here's, we get you even, and then maybe you should do a COLA every year or something.
I think that we also should consider that if you're working in New York for the same job, it's going to be $20 more an hour because of the cost of living in New York.
That's right.
Lowell, typically, and I'm in the rental business, and my rentals are a lot less than what I could get in town. Just in Eugene or even Springfield. And that's just because of where they are. And there is you have to drive into town to go to work and that sort of thing. And so I think that also helps that we don't really have to pay what everybody else is paying, because it does cost a little less to live out here, so.
And I think that was my thought on this, that this study helps us understand the total picture of what these employees are doing, what they should get paid, and what their actual benefit package for living in this community represents. So I still see value in this, what Tim was saying, to really help us get an idea of where we are compared to our peers, to make sure that we're respecting our employees as best we can.
I like Lisa's thought about, I'm sure you've done it before, calling other small cities their size, getting their data, getting their information. But, for spending the $8,000 for them to come back and say that we're underpaying all of our people 15%, or whatever, if it's going to say we're overpaying, then thank you for the study, that we can continue to go on, but if it comes back and we need to add 15% to all the salaries, then, we don't have the money, we can't barely afford the 8,000 for the study, let alone if they came back and had some big numbers like that, what do we do with them then? We don't, I think before we do the study, we should have a preliminary, this is gonna be the neighborhood, what we're gonna be coming back and finding out, and, go ahead.
So just a few minutes ago, though, you said that you wanted to make sure that we value our employees.
Right.
And we keep them.
Yeah.
So if we find out we're 15% low, isn't that what we're doing?
Yes, but I think, we should tailor it in, it's not, if we find out that we're 15% low, we're gonna bust them up 15% and pass that on to the customer. The customer's not gonna.
Versus losing an employee, what are the costs to retrain an employee to get a new
Well,
employee?
it's a lot, I'm not going to this, I've retrained and it's 1.5 times their salary is usually what it costs. Annual salary to retrain somebody, so it's not cheap. But, like I say, if we had the money, I said through the study, and we had the extra money prepared for, increases, but, we're talking here. We have pennies on the dollar, so I'm not trying to sit down and play what they're doing, I think they do deserve increases. But I'm just not sure, it's like opening what do you find doors that you don't know what's behind it, we find out. But it could be caution. Whoever.
I was just gonna ask, have you ever seen one of these studies? What are we getting for our 8,000? We're not just getting, oh, you guys are underpaid, we're getting all the data that they found also.
Correct.
Okay.
Lane Council of Governments, from whom I received the proposal, they actually provided me with a copy of what they've done in the past.
Okay.
And what they do is they identify benchmark peers. They contact those peers, they get job descriptions, they analyze those. They have interviews with employees, review our job descriptions so that they can understand exactly what our employees do, the level of certifications that they have, and they can compare that. And they'll actually show the comparable communities. They can say, we're a 70% match to Oak Ridge, we're a 85% match to Coburg, so that you can see and make our own judgment on how applicable those are. And so they provide a summary analysis of the results of that for each position. And then they also look at the total compensation package for all of their benchmark communities, look at hours and make recommendations based on our employees' qualifications, not only what the salary should be, but also the total package. So the point about us undertaking something similar is well taken, and it could give us a ballpark understanding. But having a consultant to do this would provide us a very granular look at the entire picture.
And I'm in agreement with Dawn. If we had the money, if we weren't struggling right now with the money, it'd be a no-brainer. And I want to value the employees. I do value them. But if there was any other way to get that information without spending quite that much, because that's a lot per person. Again, that 8,000 can go towards them. Like we could take a stab, but it's great to have the information. Data-driven decisions are fantastic, but what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing is we don't have the money, so we're trying to carve off this and carve off that. And a lot of communities are in that same boat. Speaking of which, no segue. The Nelson land donation that we took on, and we have maintenance for that now. This is gonna be an odd question. Can we sell that land?
No, there's a perpetual deed restriction on it to where it must remain a park for all eternity.
Okay.
Back to the study. I'll be done. I know this is not exactly how it works, it's not everyone's getting paid the same. But if we split that 8,000 evenly among all employees, that's $80 a month, which is not nothing. Not nothing. But to answer the question of what would we do if they gave us that number, that'll let this group next year have actual data to make a decision. It won't be based on feelings, it won't be us saying we value our employees, but we can actually look at where we stand, where we should stand, and make an informed decision. So I still think this should stay.
I would do it as a bonus, not as pay. And I'll tell you why. Once you make it pay, you can't go back. It's paid. And but as a bonus, you could present it as, you guys have done a hell of a job this year. And this is, because of it, this is our bonus to you.
How do you recruit new people with that?
Again,
How do you recruit new staff with that?
the bonus,
Yeah,
do we need to go for new staff yet?
well, I mean, I think we need to make decisions going forward into the future and look at.
Right, but once you make I've done payroll of my own businesses. And once you give a person another $2 an hour, you can't say, oh, things are bad, I gotta take those $2 back. You just can't do that. So you have to really consider when you make a raise, are you able to stay with that raise for eternity? And if you do a bonus, it's a whole different deal. So.
Bonuses are also taxed at a much higher rate than a.
The luxury tax.
No, they are.
What,
As you guys all know, I received a check recently. And in my pocket, I got $4,000. I'm not gonna say what the check amount was because the people in this room who needs to know what it was, know what it was.
Yeah.
And I claimed 15 on federal and state.
Universities just gave bonuses, and I think the effective tax rate was over 50%.
It's 52, it's a luxury tax.
A bonus, especially at that dollar amount.
Yeah, depends on the dollar.
Meaning 8,000 split among all employees treated as a bonus. Not gonna be a lot.
Well, I think Bill was actually suggesting if we find out that we're behind, we do it as a bonus. Is that what you were saying, Bill?
no, I'm just saying, if you want to spend the $8,000 for the employees and not do the study and make phone calls and find out what people are doing in different cities our size and under the same kind of circumstances that our city is, might be healthier than, paying $8,000 to get some guy to come do a whole study. And we already know what these guys are doing. They're doing a hell of a job out there. And, I could do the study myself and follow them around, but I would want more than $8,000. So just so you know, because I'm good. But I think you could do something else with that 8,000. And on another note, the First Street problem, you've thrown what $45,000 at it already?
For what?
40.
The First Street problem.
Legal.
You have legal fees of 45,000. I don't know why, you don't get some bids and do a 1-lane blacktop over that thing.
I did.
And say it's one way, each way, just to keep the dust down until you come to a conclusion. It's not fixed, it's just something to do. And I think that you could probably blacktop that for $8,000 or less. And just put a blacktop on it. They'll dig it out about this far and add blacktop to it, and at least you got, people are happy up there that the city's doing something, and you take that cost, and that's the same as legal fees, and you continue on, because that's not repairing it, that's just a fix, a temporary fix. That's a lot better than bouncing over gravel.
You say you got a bid
Yeah, in the beginning, before we decided what direction we go, right after it happened,
to blacktop it?
we got the 3 quotes, because when we proposed the budget was like right at 50.
50 grand.
That's just paving. That's not sidewalk, water, sewer, anything else.
No, I'm talking one lane.
No, well, we're talking something different. She was just asking. I just had a quote to patch back the asphalt that got repaired, that damaged during the thing. I'm not talking about what you're talking about. She was just asking.
He said he got a bid, so I just wanted to know.
But that was the lowest bid by far.
Yeah, yeah.
So just the speed hump that we just got quoted last year, just that speed bump alone, like in front of the school, $7,400 installed. Just for 36 inches of pavement.
Things are a lot more expensive than you.
Well, it went up quite a bit for a ton, and then, of course, you know, the labor there.
Yeah, I got a quote for a similar sized patch at one of our parks, and it was 12,000. So,
Well, I did my driveway, but it was a few years ago, but oil was up, so it was expensive, but. I think they did the whole driveway for 13, and it's a lot more than what's going on there, and they had to dig it out. So yeah, put it in, so.
Educate me about the lawsuit. Does the city get reimbursed for our legal fees if we win or no?
That's to be determined.
Does anybody else have anything more? I don't want to cut anybody off. I want to try to, we still have to go through and, review the budget detail sheets, right? So to make sure, I don't want to shut anybody down or cut anybody off if there's something more they want to talk about, ask questions.
I just have one other comment, and that is, regarding fees, and I guess this covers a lot of different fees, but it was saying, you were saying, Jeremy, not, we haven't increased fees since for a while, and we want to get them closer to covering the city costs. My attitude would be they need to meet or exceed the costs. So if I'm a developer and it costs $4,000 for me to develop this property and you're only charging me $2,000, I should be paying $4,500. So I don't know what that looks like per fee and all the different fees we have, but my attitude is we need to charge what it costs.
That's a great point. I'd like to add that, we have a ordinance in place, again, dating back to the 2011 or so, that has a fee reimbursement policy where if the costs are 125% of the fee, we're supposed to bill that back and receive it. Which again puts a burden on the city to keep track of invoices and send it out. So your idea of, under your idea, and after I've looked at some recent invoices, what's in the master fee schedule may actually increase. For instance, I think a property line adjustment application is $350. Cost us about, I did some recent, again, sending out invoices for recent land use applications. The last one was about $1,000 to process. So some of these may actually go up to meet that, what you're saying.
And I think they should. We need to pay whatever it is it really costs.
Does the city get involved with surveys as well? For lot line adjustments? Or does the applicant bring the survey in already?
The applicant does that.
And it costs that much to go down and get it recorded?
No, that's just for us to process their land use application. So that's for the planner to review it, the attorney, the engineer to review the materials, prepare the staff report, all that good stuff.
We have one more question.
Assuming you all saw the email from Peggy, I wanted to, it's a small number, but I want to bring up the library fee. I'll wear my library hat and just say, I think that number is very unrealistic. And we should prepare for that to be a lot lower. I don't think we should have it at all, but whatever decision we make, I don't think 7,500 is ever gonna happen.
I agree with that. That needs to be recalculated before budget adoption. Good points.
City Manager, do you want to go ahead and go through the next step here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. At this point, we'll review the budget detail sheets. Thank you for moving things along.
what you mentioned, that was the $7,500, I guess we'll see it on the details.
Yeah, I think there was an email or.
No, I remember the email, I just wanted to
Yeah.
see it on where it is here.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna go through the budget detail sheets. Max is going to support me in this in relevant areas, and I'm gonna call out specific accounts that have a $5,000 or greater change. So the dollar change column is proposed compared to fiscal 24 budget.
Can you tell us maybe what page we're?
I am on page 50.
50, thank you.
And I'm just gonna roll through these and I'm gonna keep going. So if you need me to stop, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep rolling so we can get through it. Okay, everybody ready? All right, beginning fund balance, that's based on what the proposed is versus the budget. As you can see, the budget amount was not the projected, which is what projected fiscal 24 for beginning fund balance is the actual amount, or actually what I'm projecting. So that was higher than budget. And then you can,
Sorry.
go ahead.
When you projected this, did you project this a few months ago? How recent is it?
April,
Okay,
April, so.
recent.
Property taxes, that's based on projected 5 houses increase. And then you're allowed a 3% increase in the tax base for the state constitution. Interest earned, and the actual interest that we've received has been higher than has in the past. We've been aggressive about investing our funds. General government operating grant, that's a cybersecurity grant that is offset in different accounts that are spread throughout the budget for a cybersecurity project. Tourism operating grant, that's based on projections. That's the money we get from Lane County from the transient lodging tax. Library operating grant, that is Peggy's project for the oral history. That's offset by expenditures in the library budget. Was there a question?
Yeah, so the change is not the proposed versus the projected, it's the proposed versus the amended budget.
As proposed compared to budget.
Yeah, okay, which the budget is updated basically in this projected column.
The projected is not the budget. That's what I'm actually estimating we're going to receive.
So but it's more accurate about what we can expect versus the budget.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Parks operating grant, that is the Fall Creek Education Foundation grant for the caboose. Electric franchise fees is based on projections, garbage franchise based on projections, land use cost reimbursement. That's a new account. We actually broke that out from land use and development permits. That's based on development activities that we're projecting. And that's offsets in the community development department, planning and engineering accounts. Library memberships, that's the account that we just mentioned earlier. This needs to be revised prior to budget adoption. That will actually be closer to maybe $300 or so. That is if the out-of-city fee is approved. Library book sales, that's based on projections. Loan proceeds, we budgeted we budgeted for the loan for the City Hall construction project in this year's budget. We actually received it in fiscal 23. So as you can see in the projected column, we will not be receiving those loan proceeds. So that's why there's a change. Capital assets disposal, I updated my estimates on the selling costs for the surplus properties. Okay, beginning fund balance is based on projected compared to proposed. Water and sewer sales. That's based on projected increase in building activity, equivalent dwelling units. Loan proceeds, we had budgeted loans. I think that was the East First Street project. We had a loan in there to try to do something with that, and we decided not to proceed with the East First Street repair. So that's why that changes there. Transfer from the general fund for the fiscal 24 budget, we budgeted an interfund loan to the general fund. That was not necessary, so that's why you see a decrease there. That's not applicable for this year. Same thing for the water fund transfer, not applicable. Beginning fund balance, that's based on proposed versus or projected versus proposed. The water capital grant, $1 million, that's the ECWAG grant. That's offset in the operating budget. The $70,000 principal payments, we budgeted the PLC. We actually received a loan. We budgeted for a loan for that to try to do something. That loan was not necessary, hence that's not applicable for this year. Loan proceeds, that's a loan for a new truck for the allocation of the water fund for a new truck for Public Works. Transfer from the sewer fund, we had an interfund loan from sewer to water. That was not, we did not do that, and that's not applicable for 25. Beginning fund balance, that is the difference between projected and proposed. State highway street tax. Oh, this is the street fund. That's based on projections. Loan proceeds, we had a loan budgeted to try to do something for East First Street. Well, we decided not to go that route, hence that's not applicable. The loan that's in the proposed column, that's for the street, for the truck for Public Works. Building fund, that's based on projected building of 5 new homes. We've had a lot of building activity in recent years, and I'm not anticipating that to continue for the next fiscal year. The Blackberry Jam, we budgeted on, I'm on page 56 now. We budgeted a transfer from the general to Blackberry Jam. We didn't do that, and it's not applicable for fiscal 25. Sewer SDC fund, all of the SDC funds are based on projections. And there's such a big increase in water because I think we doubled the SDC that we're charging. So that's all of the resource estimate sheets. Does anybody have a question about the resource estimate sheets? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm on page 59 now. General fund, administration department. Legal services at the bottom, that's the East First Street litigation. Page 61. Buildings and facilities.
That 110, a loan payment or?
No, that 110 is that's the city hall to prepare the city hall lot for sale. So that includes possible asbestos testing, that includes demolishing that structure, all of the estimated costs, and I have that tabulated in the budget message to prepare that lot for sale.
Okay.
And a little bit for the park.
That's in the park.
Oh,
You are correct. And it may not be that high. If it's not that high, great. More money for us.
Well, it depends on the buyer, right? I mean, if the buyer wants the building, we don't refer to it.
As is.
Yeah.
At any case, I put an appropriation there in case we need it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm zooming down to community development, page 63. Planning services. Again, I don't think there's going to be as much land use activity. I may be wrong. But I estimated what that might be and adjusted it. Other contract services, that's where we account for the rain contract, with that being eliminated, that's where you see that decrease. Okay, page 65. Debt service. I budgeted for a big principal payment for the library and city hall construction project. We were not able to sell the properties, so we weren't able to pay on the loan for that. So that's why there's a big decrease there. And I also factored in not being able to, there's a smaller estimated sales revenues, which means there's not as big of a loan payment. So that's also contributes to the decrease in those accounts. And I'm talking about 7113, 7114. And the same thing for the interest accounts, the $77,190. Okay, page 66, library. Temporary seasonal, okay, we hired a metadata intern, that's paid for by a grant. That's where there's an increase there. Like I said, that's entirely offset by grant funding. Other contract services, that goes back to Peggy's oral history project. That's to hire a consultant to do the oral history. IT services, that includes an allocation for the cybersecurity project. That's why there's a big increase there. Software and subscriptions. She added.
It's a new one.
That's a new account.
That's out of the
correct.
IT.
Yep,
yeah.
yep, that's new. We broke out IT into software and subscriptions out of IT. So this is a new account. That's why there's such an increase. Building and facilities, 4349. I'm not sure what that is. Do you know what that is, man?
Which one?
Page 67, building and facilities, 4,349. Oh, that's some equipment Peggy needs for the oral history project. I think it's some fancy video recording equipment and the like.
And again, offset by the grant.
Exactly. Materials and collections, we decided to include that in the operating accounts and instead of capital outlay. And there was no budget in 25 for materials and collections. All right, moving on to page 68, municipal court. There's no major changes here. There are some decreases based on the proposal to eliminate the Oak Ridge police contract. If they're not going to be writing citations, there's not going to be as much municipal court, if at all. General fund, parks department, maintenance worker 1. That reflects the decrease in hours that I proposed. Utility worker 2 and 1, those are broken out in separate positions, previously consolidated in a utility worker 1. The operator trainee you see shows up there. The new position. Page 71, sewer services, that's based on projections. Building and facilities, what did that include, Max? Do you recall?
It's the donation thing that swings.
We want to pay for that out of the SDC fund.
Oh,
Let me look at my data sheet. Somebody give me that account number.
110-420-8225.
Those are new shit. Out there, like.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Because
Um,
we originally budgeted and then they came up with a donation program.
So you're right about that, Max. My apologies. That includes a new swing set at Paul Fisher Park. We might actually be able to pay for that out of SDC fund. And then there's also 12,500 to prepare part of Rolling Rock Park for sale.
So back up to that 16 grand, are you saying that that might be able to be reduced there?
Correct.
By how much?
3,500.
3,500. By 3,500 or to 3,500?
By 3,500. Let me make a note of that.
If,
If we need that.
because we're probably gonna have to do it there in both study, just because of the history here. We did on the other side of the park already for that grant, so.
Vehicles and rolling stock, that is an allocation to the Public Works, new truck. Something else that the committee may consider, when we're talking about pay raises alike, we don't have to fund the truck, we can use those savings to go to staff compensation, that may be an option for you to consider.
I know trucks are expensive. Was that a brand new?
Yeah, and it's definitely a want, no need, but yeah.
Yeah,
brand
but I
new.
mean, sometimes you can, they have the service and you get a 3-year thing. We bought used stuff here before.
Yeah, so this is, what I went through
I
just.
didn't know
to
how
simplify
special
it.
it was. Yeah.
So it's definitely one time to be able to haul the tractor and four-wheel drive, because we currently don't have that. So as everybody's seen during a snowstorm, staff drove their personal rig, whatever. But it's to be able to move the equipment the city owns, take the mower and stuff like that. This was off the procurement site, the state share site, because then we don't have to do the competitive and nobody's gonna beat the price. It's guaranteed. I did look at auction site with Jason, recently, and that's always an option too. But the thing I wanted to emphasize is I put it in the budget every year because we had a capital plan for rotation every 3 years. That was established in 2015. It is definitely a want at this time. It is not a need. So I already told him, that's a plus. In my opinion, we should just pull it out,
Would you prefer to wait for a new one or get a used one now?
I think we prefer to wait on both. Yeah, so we have three vehicles right now. We have obviously two brand new anymore, but less than 10,000 miles on.
Right. And
then we have a 2001 hand-me-down from Army Corps. This was strictly to be able to, because some of the other capital items that you guys are gonna see in here, like a jetter truck and stuff like that we're recommending, we'd have to have that truck. So when we did the repair and replace, remember I had to rent that truck because we can't haul the city trucks. So that's a one-off. It's not a worst case scenario. So.
So how much of that, I know this is the Parks and Rec, allocation of the 70 grand or whatever it was cost. Is there more allocated to the general fund?
So it's water, sewer, parks, and streets.
Okay, so
where
this
it
is
would
the
be-
only general fund
And
impact.
only under parks.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's the same thing, it's allocation, we only work a handful of hours in the park, but if we take
Yeah.
the tractor there, we hold the back truck to redo the spring.
I just didn't know if there was another 2
Right.
grand someplace.
So total for the truck, and it's not just the truck, it's the truck with all the lights and all the safety stuff that Public Works is supposed to have. We budgeted high because we know we're not quite right now, is right at about 70 grand. So that's the
We're
light.
about the general fund now, so that's why.
General, yeah, so that would be in the parks fund, that portion. Yep.
So none of the 3 vehicles we have now will tow what you need to tow?
No,
Okay.
no, they're all half-ton pickups. None of the, and I'll just tell you guys right now, it's becoming more frequent. The biggest thing is the fact that it's not full drive. So we literally dug the trucks out during the snowpocalypse and then towed them out with my personal truck, just so me and Jared could get around town. But it's important because unfortunately, we have to go to town once a week. We don't have a choice. And, it's not, we don't like to use our personal rigs. We can, and the city reimburse mileage, but there's just so many red flags. Like you get in an accident because you're technically still on city time. And I've been part of that. It makes for a paperwork nightmare. So we try to avoid that at all costs. If we're already in town, that's different. Oh, hey, because I'll call Jeremy, hey, I'm in town of Dartmouth, do we need anything from Staples or whatever? That's different. But to take equipment in with your own rig. So like I said, I want to stress it's definitely a want, not a need. So if we get to a point where we need to do cuts, and I've already told Jeremy this, that would be the first thing that would, well, second thing, we'll talk about the first one.
I can't wait.
Well, you're waiting for an answer and I probably got to stay tuned. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Keeps everybody.
It's the next one, I promise.
We're all like,
It better be good.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep rolling. I'd like to check in just for a moment. I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes to get through this, then go to a public hearing, and then have time for some concluding thoughts before 8 o'clock. So if we can get through the rest of the detail in 10 minutes, that'd be great. So you can see police services, that's cut, page 73. Tourism department. The 34,928, that's an allocation, what we've accumulated in the transient lodging tax revenues, that is reserved in the general fund. I have that budgeted possibly for covered bridge repairs. It doesn't have to go to that, but that's been an issue we've discussed, so I included an appropriation there of everything we have in the fund balance that we've accumulated.
Is the cover bridge state owned?
This county.
County.
We have a shared maintenance agreement with them that we've had for a couple, yeah, a while.
Okay, yeah, because I saw that 34, and I'm like, wait a minute, we don't even own it. But if we're required or asked to, or have a contract.
Yeah, so we're responsible from the handrail all the way to the end, blacktop, everything, electricity, all maintenance, stuff like that. It's
The parking
shared,
lot.
shared, not
Yeah.
parking lot, no,
Oh.
nothing to do with the interpretive center.
Oh, okay.
Just that little skinny path when you literally start walking to it.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Not the bathrooms, not the vegetation, nothing else, just that little skinny part of it. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, contingency, the change there is, I've appropriated all of the remaining resources for the general fund are in contingency. Reserved for future park use, that is the revenues that we receive, other than what's already budgeted for the, transient lodging tax revenues. Okay, so we're moving on to sewer fund. I'll turn it over to you, Max.
Good. So we'll just go right down, same thing, anything greater or less than 5,000. So 10,334, that's the new FTE position we were talking about. That -20, that's splitting the two positions into two separate. They've always been bunched into that one. Same thing with the next line, it's gonna show a positive because it got pulled out. The public employees retirement, just based on actuals, some other stuff we'll get to. Engineering services, I can't remember on that.
That includes
I something
240, let me just
6116. We'll come back to that one when Jeremy finds it. IT services, same thing, that's moving everything out of that lumped one. We actually have our own IT because our only computer is part of the plant, so we don't need to budget that at all. It just come out of equipment repair maintenance.
So engineering, that's just based on projections. Our engineering costs have been higher than.
Well, we have a rate study in there too. don't
And
we?
then there's 20,000 for rate study.
Okay, so it was a rate study and then just projected what we're gonna engineering cost. Last couple of years have been kind of wonky because of the master plans, and then we've had some pretty serious development. Plus these first grade millage and stuff like that. Okay, moving on, software and subscriptions. So that is moved out of that IT fund, and this specifically is the modules for Cassell, so like how we track everything. Memberships and dues, the same thing. Some of the stuff we pay all the time, like the copier contract, we pay an allocation of that because print and build and stuff. So just moved out of that lump sum and put into an individual fund for cleaner budgeting. If you guys see something, let me know that I don't discuss. Capital outlay, so equipment and furnishings, I skipped one, but that 8,000 is for a sewer mainline system jetter that we can do in-house. We've already done one block. This is a significant savings once it's purchased to the city because we call contractors in for that. The 20,000 under building and facilities is the other thing. I believe I just told you, Maureen, and it's unfortunate they got in here, but this was to do improvements to the gate at the wastewater treatment facility. The reason this originally came up, it's been in the budget every year for the last 3 years. We were gonna switch to bulk chemical delivery, to save a little bit. The problem is to do that, we'd have to change not only the gate, but also the footprint at the end of the Moss Street, which is technically Army Corps property. We don't want to jump through the hoops or spend the money to be able to break past what's existing there, so we're not going to do the gate improvements. So that is the other one I was telling you guys about, this in the truck. So until recently, I did not know that. I honestly still thought this was gonna happen. So we've had this in the budget for 4 years. And it would be making the gates bigger, moving them, and then obviously putting the automatic for Santa Pack. When we started this, is the time we had the green waste drop off facility, we were talking about doing an unmanned system, so it's available to the public more often, so. Anyways, moving on, talked about the jetter, vehicle to rolling stock, that is the sewers portion of the truck payment. The change in the sewer system, that was some I&I money, and then also East First Street repairs. Like Jeremy said, we budgeted fixing the water line, the sewer line, and the street. Prior to we got any direction, and we decided not. So that's the difference there. The money that's left in there is for I&I projects and then sewer system repairs. Contingencies, just same thing, the changes, placeholder with the remaining balance. We're not doing the transfer of the water fund, as Jeremy spoke earlier. And the unappropriated ending balance at the very end is just that. So, everybody good on sewer? We'll go right to water fund. Same thing on the salaries, that is, separating the two, you guys can see on the picture there, so -1 just for clean. PERS, same thing, just their accounting cleanup. Engineering services, so a little bit of an increase, to help with some of that planned I&I work and some projects we have going on. And then there was one other big thing in there, but as you guys can see, we've historically been spending more money out of that anyway, so we wanted to try to capture that with development stuff that's going on. Same on the IT services, that's one category that got split into 3. Software and subscriptions was part of that. Other repair and maintenance, this is just to keep up with what it's costing us to do repairs and maintenance. Same thing, historical trend, it's slowly going up. Next page, so 82, chemicals and lab supplies. Unfortunately, we have to make an estimate what it's going to cost us for the deep drill until we get this EQUAG grant. So right now, we're obviously not going to have something this year, so we're planning on doing it chemically like we did last year. So that's the increase to offset that. Software, the same thing. So there's actually 2 things in here, but this is the PLC, right, Jeremy? Yep. So the change for that, because it was fully granted, and then also the other stuff that was in there. So vehicles and rolling stock, same thing. That's from the truck. And then water system improvements, that is the money for the EQUAG grant that we're hoping to get $1 million for that. The loan principal, I don't know how to answer that one. There's a loan principal in the sewer fund that's a little bit less. I'm not sure why. I didn't catch that.
That was the, we budgeted for a loan.
Oh, for the loan, that's right.
For
No, we
East
didn't
First
take.
Street.
That's right. Yeah, so that's just the difference taking it out. Let's see here. Contingency, same thing, just budgeting the remaining sewer fund. We didn't do that transfer. Jeremy's talking about that earlier. Okay, everybody good on sewer? Keep moving here. All right, on the streets. The new OIT position +5 there. Street should be pretty simple here. Other contract services. That was
The Lane County IGA.
oh yes, the catch basin cleaning, painting, street swiping, everything that Lane County does for us. So street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, stuff like that.
That's a 5-year contract, about $10,000 a year, and then I put an extra $10,000 in case we need any additional services. If not, that money doesn't get spent.
Yeah, we typically spend anywhere between $1,500 and $5,500 if we press some additional paint. So I think it's 5-year, not to exceed 50, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So Most likely won't get spent, but it's at least available so we can spend it. And then same thing, vehicles and rolling stock, this is the street portion of the new pickup. Yeah. Street improvements, so same thing, that was the loan that we were gonna get to do the entire project on the street side of things. The proposed is for.
That's just an appropriation, in case we need it.
Because of the potholes and stuff like that. So just to be able to spend some money, not saying we're gonna involve with that. Contingency, same thing, that's just the difference, putting the money in that's left over, and then same with the unappropriated balance, that's just how the line item balanced out. And I'll turn it back over to Jeremy on the building department.
All this is based on projected building activity. I factored in 5 new houses. It may change it. In which case we could do a supplemental budget, but I did my best to estimate building activity, and that's reflected here.
It doesn't reflect any expenses or any development of this new proposal that.
It doesn't, the plan development district, it doesn't. Because that's uncertain at this point.
Have they actually talked to you?
I had a phone call a few months ago. They're working. They've got a lot to do, but they're working on it.
Yeah, they've emailed me a couple times requesting more stuff. They're trying to get a packet ready to go to PNC or PNZ. But he did say, he spoke to everybody and he was honest about it. He said that it's gonna be a 5-year project once they start. So I would expect anything from the building department, infrastructure's gotta go in first 2 years. He does have 5 buildable lots on the top side that could happen quicker, but still, I think it'd be 25, 26.
Blackberry Jam Festival, miscellaneous. What goes in miscellaneous?
We budgeted the cooling towers last year, remember?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's just a placeholder back in there.
We were gonna buy it
Yes, we were gonna buy them.
and we didn't do that, so that's why that changes there.
Yep.
Materials and services, I think that's from the rental for those units.
Yep.
Entertainment expense wasn't as much as we thought it would be, so that's why there's a change, so. Moving on to this, the SDC funds, what I've done in all of these is I've just appropriated the balance for all of those funds into a capital outlay account. We don't have specific projects identified at this time, but there's an appropriation in case we do have a project that we want to do. The reserve funds, those are required. U.S. Department of Agriculture for some loans that we pay. We have to put aside the final year's loan payment. And then when that final year hits, we pay off the loan. The debt service schedule, our accountant wasn't able to get that to me. If I can get it next week, I will. So that concludes the detail sheets. Are we ready to move the public hearing or the question?
Item D, debate further direction from the committee. Is there any more comments or anything? Nope, okay. So yeah, I think it'd be a good time to move on to the public comments. The recommended fiscal year 24-25 budget. Let's see, public hearing on potential use of the state revenue sharing funds, discussion and possible action. The public hearing is now open.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, let's do number 2 first.
Okay.
And then we'll go to number 3.
Oh, okay, I just one right over there, didn't I? Trying to move it along.
He heard that 8 o'clock time. He ready.
Right, we'll do that. Right, so, okay, so, I'm sorry, so yeah, so the public comments is different than the public hearing.
You got it, you got it.
Yeah.
The public hearing is for state revenue sharing. It's a separate matter.
Okay. Okay. So any public comments?
There's some.
Yeah.
Gotta love the yellow stick.
See, I thought it was being the last move.
Captain forgive me, I'm a Lowell alumni, so we don't always study last minute. Well, says good things, some of our former educators, you know, Ralph Nancy, the John Boyle. He knows. So one of the things that most caught my eye, Lisa already touched on, was the expense of your proposed research.
Mr. Chairman, if we may, could we get a name?
Sorry, Stephen Winters. I reside at 503 Carroll Street. Sorry, haven't done this often, forget protocol. So, she had touched on that. Because, so when I went through your document, I saw. On page 22, your pay and benefits for the fiscal year 2025. A 3.5% pay raise will cost across all city funds a total of $18,656. For a 3.5 cost. Living expense. So I look at that balance and then I look at the proposed of 8,000 to decide to have someone look at if our guys are gonna be happy with their income. I think it would be money ahead to apply nearly half of that required balance for that cost of living expense toward that, rather than in an election year when new policies come out, taxes change, we spend $8,000 to figure out what something looks like fiscally now that might not be applicable in 6 months. Whereas that money could go directly toward actually appeasing the city workers. Was one of my thoughts, so thank you for all catching that. Another concern that I had was, I saw that there was a proposal you have for, excuse me, this doesn't lay down very well, so it's scattered.
Can we let Steven sit in the chair over there so we can hang out and have him actually speaking for the board?
I'm sorry, I said last time, I don't like doing the public speaking, this isn't my cup of tea, but there's some things that I feel like should be addressed. Oh, there we go. Make sure you get certain.
Engineer, our laws.
Can't say property magnate, right? Well, I have some question on it.
I see.
Yeah. So. I think it would be good for us to allocate those funds as someone who pays taxes here in the city. I would rather hear that the money's going directly toward funding our public service providers. I agree that Tim has a point with looking forward, looking back and seeing how we're doing as far as comparing to other cities, but also something that we forget that is something that is a direct corollary to that is what's our turnaround rate? Are we losing guys? If we're losing guys, they're not being paid enough, they're not feeling appreciated. That's something we don't have to pay $8,000 to see. When it's the last time we had a turnaround? When it's the last time you had a disgruntled employee talk about want to ship something? So I'm trying to find the exact term here. So you looked at a local option capital levy for state law allowing for you to put a levy on property taxes for up to a period of 10 years to raise the estimated $500,000 to complete the repairs on East First Street. That tax value, is that over a 10-year period you would want to implement that? Is that, do you somehow plan to extract $500,000 in additional taxes from the local citizens in one fiscal year? You know, what would be the expected projection of that? Because that's, if you wanted to get all that in a year, that's a huge tax increase on each individual home here in the city. That also then leads me to the question of is if you choose to tax us and we fully fund and repair that, What motivation do you have to continue financial expenditure into the legal process pursuing? I believe it's the core, right? It's sitting in the core, no, sorry, it was, anyway, the defendant of the case for East First Street. I think it would lead to a lack of motivation in pursuing that, or present the very realistic option of accepting a lower settlement value because the taxpayer had already paid for the repairs. So since the immediate issue had been resolved, it might be seen as a net positive to take a lesser value to just end with the ever-growing legal expenses as it goes on. Also, if you were to fund the repairs from the taxpayer and then proceed to win that legal case, will the taxpayer be reimbursed for our involvement in the program? Would it be applied directly to city funds for things going forward? Some of the things that you guys see, so from your minutes last year, May 9th, as well as May 24th of 2023. One of the goals that you guys put forward was a goal of $100,000 in the account for, I believe this is, which account was this? Sorry, this was water. Yes. So at the time, by June 30th of 2024, you wanted to have the eventual goal of $100,000 in that account. With this new document that you have out for your 2025 fiscal plan, it projects that by the, I believe it was by the end of the fiscal year, that you will be meeting that because of the increased volume of water that the citizens are buying in the state. So I think that's why you're looking at rolling that back, but also I think we're missing an opportunity with the fact that we, as the public, have already gotten acclimated to an increased cost on water. It's not great. It really hurt the first few months that it happened. Unexpected. For those of us who weren't paying attention and keeping up, it was rather unexpected. But with it being at that point, I think like some of the council members have presented, we've already acclimated to it. I think it would be worthwhile to look at putting those funds towards these other projects that you have. At the start of this, you say that the total city budget is roughly $4.7 million. It's up 15.5% or $630,000 over last year's budget. You also put that your aim of this budget has been to maintain the status quo and you do not recommend expanding services, and you propose limiting new projects. But on the very next page, we see that in July of 2023, the city council voted to set SDCs at a level to ensure that growth pays its fair share for a planned $5.6 million in capital projects. That these are necessary to expand the capacity and serve future residents of the city, estimated build out for the 900 equivalent dwelling units. So just right here, I'm curious how it is that you are presenting a budget that you say we are looking to maintain the status quo, but on the very next page, we are discussing $5.5 million in capital projects. And maybe I'm just not understanding the information very well, but I was figuring this is why it's installed here rather than trying to see through all the charts. So there are concerns with that. There are concerns with my big concern is the potential taxes for the repair of the road, and then to not have that proceed further. This was the, so something else that I thought almost went unspoken that seems to have been missed is that you keep referencing several times that you doubled the tier 2 rate for the water expenses, and even with the doubling of it, you saw an increase in water purchases and water demand's gone up. And I think part of that is something that we're overlooking, that a lot of our community members, a lot of the local homes are becoming multifamily domiciles. I don't think it's uncommon today that we're having more people, more children, more families doubling up inside of homes. So I think water usage is going to do nothing but continue to grow regardless of what you do to its tax rate, its price, its expense. We need it to survive, we need it to shower. If there's 13 people living in the house, they all stink, they don't smell each other. Something that hasn't been said yet, but I noticed in this paperwork was one of the things that might come up later, was a new lawnmower for the workers. The estimate on it was $7,000 in expenses. And there was a wish list for also a trailer that was another $4,000 in expenses, to which with your truck that you're looking at, four-wheel drive, you need it. The weather, I mean, it's been a few years since snow began, but without four-wheel drive, you're dead in the water. You guys shouldn't have to be using your personal rigs to do your job. I think when we look at something like, you're not recommending pursuing a $7,000 expense for a new piece of machinery that will accommodate, make these guys' lives easier, make their job go smoother, feel more appreciated. Maybe I know I like working with new tools when I'm on a job site. But to then, instead of putting money toward that, let's spend $8,000 to see how they would feel if we give them a raise, don't give them a raise. But that money could easily be allocated to buying a new tool. That one, you have less expenses on maintenance, you have less upkeep on, you have less risk of injury of your guys. Is another thing people forget with heavy machinery. Anytime you're performing maintenance, is the risk of injury. Having new equipment you don't have to repair reduces risk of injury. There are things that we can do that we spend money that are multi-purpose, to make the guy's life easier, to make him feel appreciated, and we can allocate funds that we save then on later things like lawsuits of injuries, damage of property. I mean, if a machine's drivetrain goes out because we've rode it around and crashed it into somebody's car on the street, that's an expense the city has to incur that we just have to come up with that money. Whereas if we are a little forward thinking and we give these guys the tools and equipment to do their jobs well, we prevent a lot of those unexpected costs. So kind of rambled, sorry to drag you through my unorganized thoughts. I saw some expenses that didn't seem to make sense to me, especially given, like I said, with it being an election year. I don't think a single tax policy is going to survive the next 12 months. Everything's going to be up in the air. I think it would be a reckless expenditure to spend $8,000 when we can use that towards equipment, towards wages, toward any other program you guys need in this list. I think it's better use of that. So, thank you for your time.
Was there anyone online that we had to?
If there's anybody online who wishes to offer public comment on the proposed budget, now is the time.
Okay,
Again, last opportunity for public comment on the budget for online participants.
now maybe we're gonna move to number 3. I apologize, for some reason, when I read this agenda earlier, I thought they were gonna be the same. So number 3, public hearing on potential use of the state revenue sharing fund. Discussion and possible action. Public hearing is now open at 7:50. The goal of this hearing is to provide the public with opportunity to suggest potential uses of state revenue sharing funds. The city of Lowell estimates that it will receive the following in fiscal year 2024-2025. State revenue sharing of $13,244, cigarette tax of $708, a liquor tax of $24,724, marijuana tax of $2,862. Anyone? Yeah.
Well, I think, like I just pointed out, I think that would be a great place to start putting it, is if it's 18,000, sorry. If it's $18,000 to get the guys a cost of living expense raise, I think that's nice. Something I was kind of kicking myself that I forgot is, last time I was here, it was with your, part of what that evening was your retention bonus.
Hmm.
Which, good for you, awesome, not knocking that. I think things like that shouldn't be necessary, we should be working where these guys have wages where we're being paid. Bonuses are a great idea, and I understand what Bill's point earlier was once we pay a guy, you're stuck paying the guy, but when groceries go up, and the guy's stuck paying for groceries, you know, he can't eat his feelings, so we can tell them we appreciate them, or we can show them we appreciate them. I think that all of these tax funds should be put towards the men who are providing services to this city.
Great point, thank you.
Does anybody online wish to speak to potential uses of state revenue sharing funds? Okay, not hearing any, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed at 7:52. So moving on to item number 4, consideration of fiscal year 2024-2025 tax rate of 2.1613, discussion and possible action. There's a suggested motion to move to approve it. With discussion or?
Well, we haven't approved the budget, so,
We need to.
are these out of order?
I don't believe so. In the past, this is typically how it's, the order of business has occurred.
But I mean, don't we deliberate the budget first
Next.
and approve it before we approve a rate?
Unless-
Budget?
Unless you anticipate, reducing the tax rates, there's not going to be any impact to the budget. It's
The rate doesn't associate with the amount of budget? Good. Change it.
Right.
I mean,
One of them is gonna be out of order. If the budget is predicated on a tax rate, that's that number. So if we amend that tax rate after we've passed the budget, we're then just gonna have to go back into session and pass the budget. So I hear what you're saying, but they both feed into each other, so I don't know how we could do it in an order that wouldn't cause a situation where if we change one of them, we'd have to go back and change the other.
okay, my impression with Jeremy's thing was that we were gonna work till 8 o'clock to review all of the detail and things, and then we're gonna talk about some of these issues that we have identified. I don't believe that we've discussed that yet. We've brought them up, but I'm certainly not willing to, I don't think we can get in 4 minutes a discussion on what we want to do with the things that, you know, we've all brought up. So I'm wondering,
You know,
aren't we at adjournment
yeah,
for
well, I was gonna
continuation?
say, do we want to?
It's adjourned until the 15th. And
When's the last time we've amended this tax rate?
This is the permanent rate. It's been like this since the constitutional amendment in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, this is the permanent rate.
I'm a little confused about the,
I don't think we can change the
roadblock
rate, doesn't
here.
that come to us from A&T?
You can decrease it, but you
But
can't
not
increase it.
increase.
Okay.
This is the
Yeah,
max we
okay.
do
So
based
maybe
on
that's
our
why we.
Okay, I'm
You're
confused
kind of-
on that.
and seems a little desultory, but
Yeah, I mean, we can get it out of the way then, is
It was
what
a
you're
housekeeping
saying.
thing. It seems like it's a
Yes.
housekeeping thing.
Yes, get it out of the way. Okay, I'm sorry, I was, because then we were gonna do consent. Okay.
Right, yeah, I don't even remember from last year, so.
Got it.
That's Jeremy, but,
Fire hall, we do the budget, and
Yes.
then we vote.
And then we do the rate, and we do the same thing at the school district.
But I don't know if that's critical.
I
Yeah,
don't foresee
apparently
any,
it's
I
not,
don't foresee
but-
any decrease at all. In that rate.
I don't think-
And
Well,
we just
we'd
did
be
it
the
again,
same
so-
to do that.
I do remember last year there was, you gave a little blurb about how this is the standard rate, and unless we were gonna lower it, we're not gonna do anything with it, which might help for next year, refresh everyone's memory.
Okay, so do I hear a motion, or do we want to just put it aside until next meeting?
I would like not to rush things. It's not gonna matter.
It'll
It's
take,
not gonna
it'll take
change.
5 minutes next week.
Correct. And that way we can absorb it.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding, what I'm hearing, item number 4 and item number 5. We're moving it to next meeting.
Do we want to have just a few minutes of discussion on number 5? So when I get back, I can be prepared for next Wednesday.
Well, if we have any, you were gonna get the salary allocation worksheet. You're gonna get the debt schedule. We answered the question about how many positions would be in that salary survey, so we already have that.
Jeremy, sorry,
Go ahead.
since it would, I think it would help to get Peggy's feedback. I'm worried that if we have any rate for out of town constituents, it might hurt our ability to get grants, and she's been very successful at grants. So if we're only gonna generate $300 in revenue on non-resident fees, but lose thousands of dollars in grants, I don't think we should have it at all. So it would help for Peggy. I did some reading of ALA, and it seems like a lot of grants stipulate that you can't have this fee. So I'm worried that we'd be chasing dollars and losing thousands.
So you're asking for Peggy's feedback on the effect of,
She writes a lot more grants than I do.
the effect of implementing the out of district.
Yes. Yes, that sounds a lot better. Thank you.
Yeah.
She's already said it's not gonna be, in her opinion, what is in the budget.
Right.
You're suggesting to
Take it out.
consider pulling it. And then we did get the estimate about the money generated by not reducing the water rates, which is the 17.25 right there. You got that? What did you say?
I'm not really hearing any negative comments really about dropping the Oak Ridge contract. When I first saw that, I do the same. Well, wait a minute, I almost got run over by a big truck coming out of the Grange. But
Now with police services.
yeah, right, but that's the thing, it sounds, cause I remember, you, Tim, last year asking the actual police department, what am I getting for my money? And I remembered that when I was reading that. I guess the thing is, Jeremy, you said in the beginning that the library is perceived are wanted more by the general public as opposed to getting a few speeding tickets taken care of or slowing people down, or which it really doesn't anyway unless they're sitting there. So it feels like that cut of 36,000 is going to stay as a budget. Am I? Because that's one of the things we need to talk about more.
Yeah, because I want to at least talk about considering a portion like we were talking about per hour for the servicing of these things that
Yeah.
we're not gonna send Jeremy and Max out with. The code enforcement and
Right.
bad issues, the enforcement issues.
We should know what that is.
Yeah, just
Yeah. And is there a way to get, I think we've talked about the 8,000, what is that going to get us, as far as, is there a way to get a sample, or is there like a summary list or something that we can see before next meeting to say, well, it might, we're gonna get all that data, or, they're gonna just suggest that for 8,000, I don't want to. Yep.
Jeremy said that he already received a sample.
Yep, that's right. So I don't know if something that could be for next meeting, or a summary of the summary.
again, I just wish League of Oregon cities would do a better job of collecting that stuff, because there's probably other small cities our size that have done that, and it's like, it's just a shame that we can't. it's public money, that's why those things are shared. That's just a verbalized frustration of mine.
Here.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I think, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Do you have guidance for everything you need to do for next meeting?
I do, I have some family business I need to attend to, so I'm heading out of town. That's why I'm asking to adjourn early. I arrive Monday evening, so when I'm back in office on Tuesday, I'll get to working on this stuff.
Okay. All right, so we will go ahead and adjourn at 8:01, and then we'll see everybody back on May 15th.
Thank you. Good work, everybody.
I know, right?